Come on in, folks. I hope you can hear me well. I'm trying desperately to do two things at once because I usually work from two computers. And just before we went live, naturally, the other one isn't working right. You see, I'm jinxed with computers. I think it's my psychic energy. It just does not work somehow with electronics. It could be my age, but I'm trying very hard to not make that a reality. Now, I'm going to welcome my lovely audience. Sadly, you're gonna hear me putzing a little bit with my other laptop because I'm still trying to get it alive and well. Because I like to simul broadcast, I guess is the word, which means that I'm on live on. Oh, there's noise from my laptop. Uh, I'm live on the YouTube and I'm live on Blog Talk Radio. And if I could do it, boy, I'd love to be live on Facebook too, because a lot of my people, we have our own Facebook group, which is called Cafe Esoterica group, radio group. So if you want to come on in and join that, please do. We'd love to have you. Really, we would. And all my previous guests are in there. And what's great about it, what's really fun about it is they post all their stuff. So if they're astrologers, they're putting up the interesting things about what's happening in the heavens. If they're therapists, they're putting up about workshops coming up and little memes here and there. And we do have the odd rock star on, and because I am a big fan of rock and roll, I wore my rock and roll shirt tonight. It says rock and roll. I'm showing the camera here. Let's see, where is it? Rock and roll, baby, right there. Rock and roll. So I grew up in the rock era, and what a lucky girl I was, because we were, as Mark Bolan said, the children of the revolution. You know, we were the ones that were going to change and save the world. Well, the world's a pretty screwed up place, but imagine if we hadn't come along. Just imagine how more screwed up it would be. So I thank my lucky stars that I was born in a time in the 50s. In fact, the year I was born, Elvis made #1 with Heartbreak Hotel. And I think that's really interesting in itself, that my own sort of history, was Elvis's #1. It has nothing to do with Elvis, of course, but it's interesting when you look at these things. So I was born in the mid-50s, 1956, and I came up 1966. The Beatles were revolutionizing the world, and they were on tour 1964. And our previous guest, Mr. Pat DeCesar, who I sent an email to, I'm hoping maybe Pat will call into the show today. Pat brought the Beatles to Pittsburgh, where I grew up. Now, I was just a little bit young to see them, but all my best girlfriends who had older sisters at the time took their younger sisters. So I do actually have friends who saw the Beatles in Pittsburgh live. And all they remember as being 10 years old was the screaming, the constant screaming, which of course it would be, it's the Beatles after all. And then little girls grow up to be teenagers, and they grow up to be teenagers who, in our time, we were so lucky because we had these rock gods appear. Gods they were. There's nothing less you could call them. Jim Morrison, Robert Plant, just to name two. And for some, Justin Hayward. I'm a big Moody Blues fan. And, these guys were ripping up the airwaves. FM had just begun. So you had in the 60s, you had everything on AM. And only certain stations were playing that filthy music, rock and roll. It makes me laugh now. I'm sure my guest is laughing as he's listening to this. And So who is my guest today? Who is this mystery guest that I have on? He is the author of I Was There, the series of books all about the different groups. And his name, the proper name of the book we're going to talk about tonight is Led Zeppelin, I Was There. So all you Zepp heads, come on in. This is your show. We're going to talk about being a rock and roll fan, loving the best rock band in the world. And Richard Houghton, I hope I'm saying his name right. Houghton, I think it is. He'll tell me when he comes on air. Wrote so many of these books, and he's still writing them. And let me just take a moment to read a little bit about his introduction. Well, I'm going to read his introduction, but I want you to know what books he's written because they're amazing. And so let me find my notes. Here we go. Richard Houghton lives in Manchester, England, with his girlfriend Kate, son Bill, and Pompapoo. That's a dog, I imagine. Sid. Was he named after Sid Vicious? You see, let's find out. He has written books on the Beatles. So the Beatles, I Was There. The Rolling Stones, I Was There. The Who, I Was There. Pink Floyd, I Was There. Jimi Hendrix, I Was There. And now Led Zeppelin, I Was There. And you know what? Yours truly was there. My story, my fan story, got into his book, and we're going to talk about that. And I wanted, I'm thrilled and thank Richard for taking my story. He must have heard hundreds of thousands of stories about the gorgeous Jimmy Page and the delectable Robert Plant and the absolutely stunning musical genius, which is John Paul Jones, and of course, the banging bongos of Bonzo, which make up Led Zeppelin. So he has also co-authored a book about indie band The Wedding Present with the band's lead singer, and wrote the official biography of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, which is called Pretending to See the Future. His website is Richard M. Houghton, HOUGHTON.com. Now, I'm going to bring Richard up in just a second. Would you like to call and be on the show? We would love to have you, okay? This is your show. I see people in the, oh, great. There are people. Who have we got here now? I tuned in to ask your author to write a song about the American Army of Two. Couple of girls stopped a British invasion during the War of 1812. Well, this is Vorpobite 3, who has a picture of a shark. Hello, welcome to our chat room. We have chat rooms, folks. We have a chat room in the Blog Talk Radio studio, which you're hearing me on, and we have a chat room which is we're live and in color. You'll see me in my rock shirt, okay? At Cafe Esoterica, just go to YouTube and put in Cafe Esoterica and radio, and you will see me live. And there's a chat room, and you can ask Richard questions. You can talk to us. Tell us your story. Were you a fan of a great rock group? It doesn't even have to be Led Zeppelin. It can be The Who. It can be anyone you love. We all love rock and roll. Put another dime in the jukebox, baby. Okay, this is our show. I love rock and roll. I have a cousin who's a very famous rock star in her own right, who married a very famous tennis star. I won't say who they are, but I've been around this scene all my life. My aunt was the manager of the Bitter End in the Greenwich Village in the 1960s, and the Gaslight, my Aunt Betty. And, believe you me, what a legacy that place has. Everyone who's anyone started there in America, okay? Maybe, the British guys came over later. But the British invasion, boy, it was sweet. It was amazing. So if you want to call into the show, I'm going to give you the call-in number now. Please make a note of it. Or you can ask questions in the chat room, and we will get back to you. Grateful Dead. Okay. Hi, my friends call me Vorp, V-O-R-P. That's in our chat room on Cafe Esoterica. Okay, well, I'm very glad you joined us, Vorp. And we are going to hear some music by Led Zeppelin today. We're going to talk about the band, but let's bring up our guest. His name is Richard Houghton. He's written a series of these books. I Was There, Led Zeppelin is the latest. And Richard, thank you so much for coming on our show today. And I'm thrilled to have you. So, welcome. Hello there. Richard is calling in from Manchester. Okay, so Richard, I want to talk about everything and anything that has to do with your life, your series of why you got involved in this. But let's go. I always ask my guests this, so this is not rocket science, okay? I am a curious person. I would like to know how you got started in what you're doing. What made you want? I mean, I love rock, so you must love it to write about it. But what made you start this process of books? And what was the first book that you wrote? Was it the Beatles book? Right. Wonderful, wonderful idea that you had. When you have that many books around you, see, I mean, I'm just making a plug for reading. People aren't reading anymore, and they don't know what they're missing. Young people aren't reading anymore. They're listening maybe to Audible at the most, But honey bunnies out there, you got to read. You got to take in knowledge. Knowledge is power. And without power, we're all just slaves. You've got to read, and some of the most enjoyable things. It doesn't have to all be profound, but something as beautiful as if you love a rock band. And I've read a lot of autobiographies and biographies about the Beatles. I'm particularly like reading a lot of Beatles books, actually. And I have a signed thing from John Densmore from The Doors. Assigned his book was autographed for me, and I have a couple of these things, and they are treasures to me. I absolutely love them. So being in not one but two of these books, it's like I can die now. I've achieved a great goal in my life. You know what I mean? I'm kidding, but still, it's good stuff. Okay, Richard. So you started with the Rolling Stones, right? And and then what happened? So that book probably was a big success, I'm guessing. Yes. And you were motivated to do. When I was looking at your website, I saw, my God, you have you're working on things as we speak, and you just published a Led Zeppelin one. So what you're just doing them all the time now, aren't you? Right. Well, that sounds genius, really. I mean, I remember in my day, there was always this silly battle between the Rolling Stones versus the Beatles. Were the Beatles the right group to follow, or was it the, rough and ready Rolling Stones? And what I think is really funny and ironic, I live in Kilburn, London, not the swankiest area of town, but it has a big rock history, Kilburn. And unbeknownst to me, I only found this out, what in certain things has just come to me to find, little bits of information here and there. Mick Jagger had a flat down the road, right? Right, it's where Kilburn High Road is. You go a little bit higher and you get Shoot Up Hill. Ironically enough, it's called Shoot Up Hill, and John Lennon used to visit him in there all the time, and with Keith as well, Keith Richards, and they just hung out, and so the big sort of thing between them. I mean, the Beatles wrote their first main hit. So it was a lie, it was a big lie that they were enemies and you had to follow one camp, you be in one place or the other. You remember what I'm talking about, Richard? Yeah. Yes. Well, you know, it's I mean, just this is what I said in the beginning of the show. I'm so glad I was born in that time because I think kids today, you know, with their Beyonce and their rap, they haven't a clue. They haven't. I'm sorry, I have to say it. I don't care if I sound like an old lady. The beauty of the rock gigs, the beauty of them was, you know, what's the message in the song? What's the message? And whether it was about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, which it often was, or whether it was about profound metaphysics and spirituality, which was coming through George Harrison's Zittar, you know, and fabulous songs like Within You, Without You, and which I play a lot of these songs on the show. And the Moody Blues, of course, were known. I mean, and the word is, you know, that's a Moody Blues song. So my generation, if you didn't get spiritualized, you got drugified. You know, if you didn't get drugified, you got sexified. You know, if you didn't wake up one way or the other, there was something wrong with you, you know, because there was a constant pounding. Literally, the beat was like sex, okay? And when we talk on the show about spirituality and chakras, you know, it's all base chakra stuff, but it illuminates up to the heart. It illuminates up to the crown chakra. And it says, you know, not every song, of course, but it says, you know, we are different than our parents. Well, that's nothing new. Frank Sinatra had the Bobby saucer, you know, in his generation. But we have something to say that's never been said before. And that word is really freedom, freedom of speech, freedom to be gay, freedom to be a woman, freedom to be black, freedom to be a hippie if you want, freedom to be, just to be. And for me, that's what rock did in the world. That's what it did. A lot of people don't realize it, but rock was the voice of the revolutionary times of the 60s. And I think we have a lot to be grateful to these guys. Now they may be just thinking, I'll get some girls and start a band, and you know, I'll grow my hair long and learn how to play this guitar and give me some of that old rock and roll. But a lot of it was very different than that. I'm curious about your, you know, what you think about what I just said, Richard. Mm. Right. You know, it's very interesting because I think I'm gonna try this just for a minute. I'm gonna put us on Facebook as well. Let's see. I'd like to get some people calling in about their fan stories. So on my other computer, which is finally booted up now, let's see if I can get us in there. But I'm gonna carry on talking. Anyway, I remember exactly that, actually. I really remember that. Hold on one sec. I'm just going to write something here, and then we'll be going live on Facebook. So that way people can see us and they can call in, right? And so Cafe Esoterica is live. I loved Mary Quant makeup. Oh my God. And I love the style of Mary Quant. And I was from Pittsburgh, not London, right? So it did change even me as a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old. You know, I was wearing Mary Quant makeup, and I was reading Teen Magazine, and David Cassidy, God rest his soul, you know, was the big thing, and in America at the time. And then they had on the Partridge Family, which was sort of sweetened up rock a little bit, didn't it? You know, I think you got it here too, didn't you? Okay, I'm just putting us on. I'm sorry to be so late. I would have done this earlier had my computer worked, but you know, it's now working, my other one. So Cafe Esoterica Radio with my guest. I was there, Led Zeppelin. It should be Led Zeppelin. I was there, shouldn't it? Hold on, I've said it wrong. My guest, Richard. How do you pronounce your surname, Richard? Houghton? Houghton. Houghton. I'm so sorry. Okay, Richard Houghton. Okay, I want to get us some people in here. On right now. Come on in. Okay, so let's talk about, okay, the 60s were a crazy time and a wonderful time. And of course, Britain and America, different strokes for different folks, because we did have the Vietnam War raging, which was really fueling loads of these things, you know. And unfortunately, I didn't want my boyfriend going off to Vietnam, and neither did all my, you know, friends. We didn't want that. We wanted our peace. We didn't want war, you know. We wanted peace. We wanted happiness for our families and friends. And we definitely, you know, make love, not war. And these thoughts really were picked up by the rock bands coming over from England, because I remember reading, I think it was Justin Hayward of the Moody Blues said, we couldn't understand, we were playing these college campuses, and, you know, these kids were off to war or not, you know, what, and we would ask them, what do you think about Vietnam? What do you think you should be there? And the kids were like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I should be in Vietnam or not. There was no consciousness about it. Let me just say to my Facebook people, hi, Michael Luton, previous guest. We're doing rock and roll tonight on Cafe Esoterica. Richard Houghton, I said it right, Richard. Houghton? No. Houghton. Richard Houghton has written, that's it, has written many books on the fans, what the fans think, and they've sent in their hundreds of thousands of letters to Richard. His books are the one we're talking about tonight, Led Zeppelin, I Was There, and yours truly was there. I was there in 1972 or 73. So let me go there for a second, because we've got people coming in on the Facebook, which is nice. So we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and we're on Blog Talk Radio. This is cool. This is how it should be. If you have a story and you want to speak to my guest, a rock and roll story, you were a fan, you were at an event. Today it's Led Zeppelin, but my guest has written many books, The Who, The Beatles, Pink Floyd, orchestral maneuvers in the dark, many big bands, you know, many famous bands, Jimi Hendrix. If you were there and you want to talk to my guest, please call in. I'm going to give you the call-in number, and here it is. It's a new number for our show. It is area code 858-956-3204. And speak to Richard, okay? Or just share your story. Now we're going to go for a break, Richard. We're up to the first half hour. And guess what song I chose for us? Take a guess. It's a Led Zeppelin song, but which one do you think I chose? How about California? How about going to California, right? And we'll be back in 3 minutes or so with my guest, Richard. Oh, it's why does it say 42 minutes? Oh my God, what happened? Okay, let's see. I'm sure it's all right. Here we go. Should be playing now. And what's happening? Okay, we have dead air. There's a problem here with the, what is that? Okay, I'll have to see. I knew we were going to have trouble here. We always have trouble with this stupid Cafe Esoterica radio. It's not stupid, my show. I'm talking about with the Blog Talk radio. Let me try again. Hold on. I have to capture it somewhere else now, which is a shame, but here we go. Just so you can hear it, because you should hear it. It's important to hear it. Right. I remember this song so well from Led Zeppelin when I moved to California after leaving Pittsburgh and graduating high school, and Robert Plant was singing, you know, Going to California. That's it. I was done. I had to go myself, you know. So let's see here. I'm finding it here. And here we go. Sorry for the delay, folks. Having a lot of technical problems today for some reason. Once again. I think you can hear it now. Can you hear the songs? Okay, thank you, everyone. We're back. We're back in the studio again. While I was playing that, very interesting, Facebook blocked me for playing that song. How do you like that? It just, your live video has been stopped. I just, unbelievable, right? Let's see if I can come back to that. Let's see. I'll just go right back in. Unfortunately, I agree about copyright and all the right stuff, but I'm trying to do something here. I know it's not easy. Okay, Richard, you're with us, right? Okay, good. Okay, so Richard, let's go back, and we're still talking about the rock bands that made the world and made the world great. And I think it's so important to talk about why do people love Led Zeppelin? Why? What do you think? Mm. Yeah. Led Zeppelin really, not only did they tear the rule book up, but so did their manager, as we know, Peter Grant, made it doable and viable for every band after them to get a decent pay for their work, for their, for everything, for their tours. And correct? You know that, right? Yeah. And it's very interesting how people. I don't think people, especially younger people. I don't want to go on about younger people, but because they have their own gigs and their own thing and their own music, like we did. But people don't realize how hard these bands worked. There was no internet, there was no mobile or cell phones. Forget that. Even a transatlantic phone call must have cost a fortune back then. If you think of, Brian Epstein calling New York to book the Beatles, how much did that cost? Although he had money, but I mean, what we don't understand. I wish Pat DeCesar. I sent him an email. I've been so busy. I didn't have a chance to really follow it up, but I wanted Pat to call in because Pat did book the Beatles, in 1964, and he was the rock promoter in not only Pittsburgh, but all around that tri-state area. And Pat wrote a book called Hard Days, Hard Nights, all about it, if you want to pick that up too. But it is absolutely, what a story, what a life to be a rock promoter. So we're writing, your book it is wonderful and beautiful. It's all about the fans. And I have, of course, my own fan story. And before we run out of time, would it be all right if I shared it? Richard, I can't thank you enough. I feel like my life has been transformed. I am in this book, folks who are listening to me on Facebook and on YouTube. And here is the email I actually sent Richard. Here it is. You can see it live and in color, where I gave my story about, because at the time Richard was calling for, I didn't know Richard. He didn't know me. I belonged to fan groups on Facebook, Led Zeppelin, everyone I love, And he put something out there. Anyone got a fan story they want to put in a book. Now, a lot of people know that I got into, a couple months back, David Bowie, I Was There, which is written by your friend, Neil, is it Kazar? How do you say his surname, Richard? Kazar, yeah. And I didn't know you two knew each other. I mean, it's just as, but obviously this is the franchise, right? This is the books. And David Bowie, I Was There. And my story takes place in Kilburn. It's a really cute story. And this is a very similar story. All my life growing up as a teenager, I saw David Bowie, I saw Led Zeppelin, I never saw the Beatles. I was too young. And they stopped touring, and I never saw, I'm not a Stones fan personally, but my brothers went to them many, many times. I never went. But I love Led Zeppelin. I belong to a Facebook group that is with a couple girlfriends of mine, and we just dish the dirt on Led Zeppelin. That's what we do, okay? And so here's my story, and it takes place. So I'll just read it and I'll share it with everyone. And if people want to comment on it, they can. But it's in Richard's book. I don't know which page it's on, but he sent me the link. It's definitely in his book. And this is me telling the story. So I put, hello, I was there. That picture of the band posing in front of their private jet to take them to concerts was in my hometown of Pittsburgh, PA. That's a very famous picture, a video of them. And Robert standing there with his no shirt on, you know, and Jimmy walking up towards the plane. I was there at the concert they were about to do. It was 1973. And I was 16 going on 17 years old, and my best girlfriends and I went to see them live. When Robert got up there with a girl's top on, because for us it's like, what is he wearing? You know, remember, men were men and women were still trying to come up a little bit with women's lib. You know, it was very distinctive roles, the sex back then, and it started to homogenize. And Robert was just one, and of course David Bowie was Ziggy Stardust, but it started to homogenize a bit. And then we get the term unisex. That started a little bit later, didn't it? But here we go. So a girl's top on with his bare chest hanging out, it was unforgettable. The moves, the music, his wailing, soulful voice, blended with Jimmy's guitar, Bonzo's banging beat, and John Paul Jones's bass line. Whoa, we were tranced out. It was like a religious experience, and when Stairway to Heaven came on, which was their big hit then, not a sound was made as everyone listened intensely. If you were there in 1970, 72, 73, this was the tour to go see, and we did. Now, this is actually not the story, but I have loved Led Zeppelin all my life. Who knew I would end up working in the Primrose Hill Healing Center in London, England, and dating their owner, Ken. He was a good man, Ken. This was now 1988, and I had lived and worked here in London for 3 years. So one day after work, Ken said to me, "Do you want to get a drink before we go home?" It was a particularly hard day, and we both worked with patients or clients, and we were tired. And I said, "Yeah, okay, where should we go?" Now, why he never, ever mentioned this place before, which was just at the bottom of the road where the Primrose Healing Center was, I don't know. But that particular night, he said, "Okay, why don't we go just here?" We'll walk. So we walked in there, and Ken sat down first, and I said, "Okay, I'll get us the drinks." And as I approached the bar, right smack dab in front of me were these two bums sticking up. One belonged to someone with long, curly blonde hair, and the other darker hair. And from the back, all I could see was the bums and the hair, right? They were leaning on the bar, and I could only see them from behind. Suddenly, the penny dropped as I saw the blonde turn and speak to the other, and I could see it was Robert Plant. Can you imagine 1988, this girl from Pittsburgh, and there's Robert Plant. I could stick my hand out and touch him. He was that close to me. I was just about to go up to him and say hi, and could we buy them a drink, get an autograph? Could I dump my boyfriend and run away with him? You know, the usual. When he seemed to get a vibe, someone was standing behind him, and they ran up the stairs, which were right behind the bar. There was a staircase. He did not turn around to see me at all, and maybe they were headed that way anyway, but I was caught, absolutely caught. Should I run up the stairs after Robert Plant and get an autograph and tell him how much I love him and how I had seen him in Pittsburgh with Led Zeppelin play a couple times, or should I be a good girl and just get my boyfriend a drink and behave myself and sit down? I stood frozen and then looked at my boyfriend, and still in shock, I said, "Is that who I think it is?" And he said, nonchalantly, looking up from his newspaper. Who? Robert Plant? Oh, yeah, he comes in here all the time. He lives around the corner. I was shocked. And I was so mad at my boyfriend for not telling me. Why didn't you tell me he lives in here? He comes in here. I was outraged. How could he keep such precious information from me? His response, I didn't know you liked him. I was still in shock as I sat down and had my glass of wine waiting in vain for Robert to come back down the stairs. For the laws of gravity state, what goes up must come down. But no, he never reappeared. Like a magician, he disappeared out some trap door the pub must have had created just for him. Of course, devastated, that was it. I ended up leaving a boring boyfriend for many reasons. That boring boyfriend, he wasn't boring, he was a good man, but it just wasn't meant to be. So it goes on that I created I didn't create it. My girlfriends and I created the Led Zeppelin's Ladies Club, which is still open on Facebook if anyone wants to join. And many years later, I became friends with Pat DeCesar, who is the guy who booked them in to the Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh, which created Stadium Rock, because he was the first guy. He had so many tickets he couldn't fit them in the Civic Arena, which was a normal place, and he used the stadium for football, which is called at the time the Three Rivers Stadium. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And there you go, my story about almost meeting Robert Plant. I'm sure you had a million stories like that. What can you recall, Richard? Any story that really, took the biscuit for you? Was really rock and roll. Anything at all? Oh my God. Yeah. one of the things that, I mean, the lead, you know, just for my Facebook people who are coming in late thinking they're going to get a tarot reading, no, this is Cafe Esoterica Radio, and we are talking to a fabulous author whose name is Richard Houghton, and Richard wrote Led Zeppelin, I Was There. And it's all a collaboration of all the fans who've written in about Led Zeppelin, and whether they were at the gigs or whether they had a personal experience with one of the members of the band, or like me, a close shave, you know, almost met Robert Plant right in front of me. I think it's a wonderful thing. He's done many, many books. I'm just recapping this. He's done The Who, The Beatles, Pink Floyd, Jimi Hendrix, coming up with, right now you're working on it's Glad All Over. What's the name of it's not also orchestra on the Smiths. That's right. A lot of Smiths fans out there. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Don't we all? Don't we all, Richard? Don't we all? Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah. We want to be young. We want to have those memories, and those memories are very precious. To be, you know, when we grew up. Also, it's the thing about feelings. Let me just go to this, and then we're going to take another break. I will have to mute. Listen to this madness. I will have to mute Facebook while I play a Led Zeppelin song, because unfortunately, you know, the Facebook Nazis want to cut me off from my live feed because I was playing that, and very sad about that. But you know, must do, must do. So we're going to come back. We're going to talk more about Led Zeppelin with our wonderful guest, author of all these books. I Was There, fan books, Richard Houghton. Okay, I know I'm saying it wrong again. Houghton, Houghton, like Hought. TON is the, and I have the website up on the Facebook. I have the website up here in the chat room, on both chat rooms, in the YouTube and on Blog Talk Radio. Okay, let's do that. Let's take a break. We are playing for the Facebook Nazis. We're playing very sadly. We're going to play Thank You, which I love. I think it's a beautiful song. It really is lovely. I didn't do any big banging ones. We're going to do one to finish with tonight. But so let's go there. I think I've got a problem in my studio. I have to find it on my YouTube. Hold on. And so... yeah, this is what happens when you go live. See, everything goes a bit nuts, but that's the way it is. And now, before I play it, I am going to play it. I got to just mute the Facebook before they go nuts. Okay, so hang in there, Facebook. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Don't go away. We've got more of a great show all about Led Zeppelin, all the little things you want to hear. So hang in there and we'll be right back. Let me just do this. Right. Okay, the sound's off there. Here we go. Thank You by Led Zeppelin. Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here. We're unmuted. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. Facebook put a little punch on me too because I mentioned it. Even the sound was off. My God. But anyway, we're still live on Facebook. We're live on Blog Talk Radio. And we're live on YouTube. And that is a beautiful song. Thank you by Led Zeppelin. And, you know, a lot of people, because you don't have the banging and the, you know, deep, heavy rock and roll sound, doesn't mean that these groups can't do beautiful ballads, beautiful acoustic work, and their love for that too. Their love for that too, right, Richard? So I would like to invite our listening audience to call in and share your stories, your rock and roll stories. If you have any, please do. The number is, if you're calling outside the United States, you need the code to the USA, which is 001. And then inside the United States, you dial 858-956-3204. And you will reach the studio directly. And if you call in, right, you can share your rock and roll story with Richard. Who knows? Maybe he'll put it in his next book. What are you working on next, Richard? Yeah. Oh, any Black Sabbath fans out there, if you love Black Sabbath, if you're crazy about Sharon's husband, by all means, call in and talk to Richard or send him an email. I was at that gig. What is it? I was at that gig. Let me read it properly. Right, Richard, will you take their, okay. I was at that gig at gmail.com. And Richard's website, you can check it out. If you don't remember it or whatever, you can always ask me. But it's his, all the W's, richardmhoughton.com. So please do check it out. Okay, let's go back to what we were talking about. If anyone's going to call in, I don't know, but let's talk about, what do you think their legacy will be like in 50 years' time? Not just Led Zeppelin, but maybe all the bands, because you've only written about some of the best in the world. So what do you think is going to happen long after we're gone, 50 years from now? Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. I love Neil. Yeah, I love Neil Young. Yeah. Yeah. The thing that's fascinating to me is Look, let's be honest. A lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll under the bridge there. A lot of them survived in spite of all that. And it was very rough. I remember 1970, we had Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and Jim Morrison all died within like, it was like the rock and roll trifecta, you know? They all died within a very, very quick time. Within months of each other, if not weeks, and very upset. Do you remember that? Right. Mm. You know, but it's so important that we are able as teenagers to separate from our parents. This is 101. This is basic psychology 101. Do you know what I mean? And and you know, it's just important for us to have our own music, our own style of dress, to be independent from our parents and begin that long process of separating, because separating from the parents is actually the most emotionally healthy thing to do at certain ages. Now, if you do it too young or you do it too late, you know, you're in trouble. But the most important thing you can do is give, if you will, teenagers the very thing they need, which is rock and roll, rebelliousness, and it's a good thing to be able to separate from your parents and not dress like them, not act like them, not you know. You know, my daughter just graduated university last week, and she's 22 now, and she's going through that process of separating from me, and it's painful as the parent. But I also know that it's important she has her own ideas about her life, and to come into them, you have to have your own. You play around with growing up. You play around with identities. You play around with who's who. Young girls loved. I'm just thinking of David Cassidy, you know, because it's kind of like a safe transition to a man. If he's far away and you don't, you know, you're never really going to sleep with him, it's only a fantasy. Then young girls begin to allow themselves. That's what happened with the Beatles. The Beatles look so, you know, pip pip cheerio, you know, clean, and not you know, their sense of humor and everything was very safe. It was safe. That's the best way to say it. But as the Beatles grew and as they experimented with drugs, they became not safe. You know, really, when you think about it, not, I don't mean they were bad, in any way bad, but they were not a safe option for a mother. Maybe their money, but definitely not their drug taking, you know? So you have, whereas Jim Morrison, he was not safe from the word go. You know, from the word go, always slithering like a snake on stage. There was some deep, dark stuff going on there with Jim. So, you know, it's important that we have our idols. It's important that we have, you know, Bob Dylan did it in a different way, didn't he? He did it with his words, his lyrics, his words. I think were what made Bob. I mean, at one time he was violently hated in America because he was calling the shots and telling the truth about how people were treated in America. Masters of War is a genius song. It talks about, you know, big war is big business and they don't care who dies, and that's exactly what was going on in Vietnam, right? And you know, it's ironic. All these years later, he won the Poet Laureate Award. Don't you see what I'm saying here? I'm agreeing with you that this to jump from that transition from, you know, hated low life, how dare you come in and wear your hair long and be this person who upsets the apple cart, who are you, to 50 years later the finest poet on the planet. And that's really what it is, you know. Yeah, yeah. My God, Richard, we went so quickly. We're almost out of time. I just noticed the time. We've got 10 minutes. We've got 9 minutes left. Can you believe that? It went so quickly. And three times I had to go back on Facebook. Now there's two people there, Steve and someone else. But if you want to catch the whole interview, please check it out on Blog Talk Radio. Go to blogtalkradio.com/Cafe Esoterica Radio, and you'll find this edition, this show, right? We're also available on Spotify. We're also, so if you didn't catch us live, it's okay. You can hear us on Spotify, Podbean, Acast. We're also on Stitcher. And you can watch the video of me doing the show on YouTube again. And I'd like to thank Richard for coming today. It's already over with, Richard. Can you believe it? Oh, I love your books. I love them. I'm going to get them all. I promise you. And you mentioned on your website that if a person wants an autograph from you, are you still doing that? From if they buy their book? Okay, okay. So what do they do, Richard? Tell the audience. How do they do it? Right. Okay, that's fantastic, and they will do that, I'm sure, because you know, we all love rock and roll, and thank God for people like you. What a, you know, this is like a history too, isn't it? A history of the band and a history of everything that they really, the gigs. Oh, sorry, we're not going out yet. Hold on. We will be though, to ramble on. Okay, Richard. So thank you very, very much for being my guest today. A little higgly piggly with difficulties with the two computers, but you know, I try so hard. And God bless you. Keep writing. We love your books. We love rock and roll. We want these stories. They're great. Great stories to tell our children and our grandchildren too. And on that, I'm going to go out with my usual in this metaphysical moment, which is the word. Here it is. In the madness of life, the hustle and bustle of our daily grind, comes the healing power of lyrics, melody, and rhyme. For who cannot say they haven't been washed away by a sound so sublime, keeping its time, healing our hearts and minds? Music, lyrics with meaning, transcends like meditation. If the sound be Om, then that takes us peacefully within. But bang that drum like bonzo and you're shaken down below. How can it be we are dedicated slaves to the musicians who make these? One by one, these beautiful and powerful bands are getting older, their youth just fading away as they take their last stands. Once again upon that familiar stage, yet own it they do, just once more for me and for you. Gods of rock, rock on. In this metaphysical moment, these are the memories of fun, of good times, and of youth that make us fondly smile within. Whenever their songs come on the radio or we are able to get tickets to their gigs, these faint but emotive memories come to life. Thank you to all the bands we grew up with who made us the people we are today with their meaningful lyrics, their pounding beat, and their fantastic revolutionary ways. Gods of rock, we salute you. And on that note, I'll be playing out Ramble On by Led Zeppelin. Next week, my dear friend Petey Silvera is here, past life regressionist, marriage and family therapist, and author of her latest book. We'll see you then. Bye, Richard. Bye, Facebook. Bye, YouTube. And we'll be back next week, same time, same place. Ramble On, everyone. Here we go with Led Zeppelin, one of the best songs they ever wrote. On my way. Right. So that's it for this edition of Cafe Esoterica Radio. One more time with gusto, right? We'll be back next week with Petey Severa, and Petey will be sitting in right next to me. She's going to be on the show live. She's come over from Florida with her husband, and they're going to check out London town, and she's coming to my crib, my place, to sit next to me, and we're going to do the show live together, which should be a lot of fun. I'd like to thank my guest, Richard. He was amazing. I'm sorry about a couple of the glitch. You know, this is what it is. I need to listen. If you're out there and you love Cafe Esoterica Radio and you want to help and you're a sound engineer, for God's sake, get in touch with me. You can always call me, email me at cafeesoterica@gmail.com. That's the show for tonight. I love rock music. I've always been a big fan. I'm a rock chick supremo. I'll die one. There's nothing wrong with that. And some of my best memories are hanging out with my friends and seeing some of these shows. And Led Zeppelin, cream of the crop, really. If you have any fan stories that you would like to get into Richard's book, by all means, please email him at iwasthatgig@gmail.com. And he's working on, he said he's just finishing a book on the Smiths, and he's got many books on his website. They're all available on Amazon, so go get them and live the dream all over again. Until then, I will bless you. See you next week with PD, and we're going to talk about past life regression and also about marriage and family therapy. And, we need answers in this crazy world, and I'm trying to supply them, find them, talk about them, talk about the things that matter. So till then, my friends, namaste. See you then. Bye.